Okay, everybody, this is my spoiler review of the new Netflix series, The Sandman. This was one of my most hyped up shows for the year. I actually read the comics, the whole series, for the first time last year to prepare for this and kind of get in the zone all about the story of The Sandman. And I'm going to put a first disclaimer here that will probably tune people out right away from watching this video, but after reading the whole comic series, I think it's one of the most overrated stories I've ever read. And I'm actually saying that in the sense of I still really enjoyed it. I could see why it's praised as being a brilliant piece of work. But in the part of engaging me, bringing me in and keeping me hooked and excited for what's next, like turning pages, the Sandman graphic novel series did not do that for me. I think that the Sandman, to me, is the best in the comic book series when it's just self-contained stories. I thought those were incredible and lived up to the hype. But the overarching story in the Sandman series never really engaged me or brought me in. And that I want to say before I get into my review about the show, because I still felt a lot of those same feelings with the show, because it is still mostly the same story, that overarching story, where I prefer things like the cat story in the comics or the Tales of the Sand, or even what we get to see, which was the best episode, is the 24-hour story from the comics. But I have a lot of thoughts here, and with this show, it's interesting because I think they got a lot right, and there was a lot here to enjoy, and you got some really good actors in this, but there's really two critical things that really kept the show from going to the next level for me. The first is the casting. And that's only with two people, where I think they got it right with everybody else. But two people. And that's with the Sandman himself and Lucifer. Now, the reason I'm saying it with the Sandman, I want to get into first, is that Dream, when you're reading the comics, or just the look of him, he's very cold. He has this darkness in his soul to him. He literally has black eyes. Now, they did not go with the black eyes, which I can understand, which is kind of hard to do in just a character in TV in general and keeping that up. But maybe they should have here, because the actor Tom Sturridge is a really good actor. It's not him that's the problem in his acting. It's who they casted. It's just how he looks, meaning he gives off a friendly demeanor to me, too friendly. Like, I don't see darkness in his soul. I don't see brokenness. I just see a really nice guy. You know, I think he'd play a great Harry Potter when he was younger. He's that person. You don't want Daniel Radcliffe playing the Sandman older, right? So I feel like it was criminally miscast, and to people who were like, well, he looks just like Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman had a lot of inspiration for the Sandman off of himself, which is true, but the artist in the Sandman with Neil Gaiman as looking like the Sandman, but it still was a way darker version of Neil Gaiman, not Neil Gaiman himself. So that's where I get frustrated, where it kept taking me out of it, that he just is not giving me that commanding presence. That's also this thing where he enters the room, like in the comics, you feel, oh my god, Dream is here. What is he going to do to Sandman? That did not happen here. It just felt like he was one of the crew in this show, and that really disappointed me. And again, just seemed too friendly. It's just his demeanor. It's just a miscast. It's nothing against the actor, in my opinion. That was a big criticism. The other one was the casting of Lucifer, like I said, with Gwendoline Christie, who I'm a huge fan of from Game of Thrones. I think that, again, just a total miscast, where I feel like her as an actress, she has a certain range, certain characters she's perfect for, like Brienne of Tarth, or even in the Star Wars series as Captain Phasma. She's this commanding force, but she's also someone who is not someone who's like this character that needs that full kind of charm there, and that devilish side, literally, for Lucifer. I never felt like she was right for this part just from the minute she got on screen. I didn't feel like I was watching just Lucifer. Like, this is a role you kind of want to have a little more fun with. You want to be commanding, but you also want to just embody hell, right? Embody Lucifer. You're the devil for Christ's sake, you know? And I felt like she brought nothing to that. I felt like it was just Gwendoline Christie just doing what she does best, which is, you know, being this powerful force, but she's also more, comes off as like a loyal, honorable person. And maybe that's in my head, being just so used to Brienne of Tarth, but I did not feel Lucifer vibes here at all, and that really was disappointing to me. And on the topic of Lucifer, there's moments too that are, it's a really hard comic to adapt to screen, and maybe the battle between her and Sandman just a little like corny to me. It didn't come off amazing with them naming different things, fighting each other. It just didn't work. And again, it's such a hard comic to adapt to TV because the comic, you feel like you're in a dream. There's so many amazing visuals, so it's tough to pull off. And that's where my second big criticism of the show is the option they did with the camera, because they do a lot of out of focus background, blurry effect on the edges, kind of like trying to sell it as like a dreamlike effect. But it also, to me, is just hiding. They didn't have enough money to kind of fill in the background and make it look amazing like it might be in the comics. And that's a budget thing. But it's also, you know, you could take off that filter in other scenes where we're just in a diner, for example. It's too much. Like, I thought it was just taking away from the quality of the image in general. I want to see a picture perfect image for a show like this. And I thought that was just a terrible choice how they kind of did the cinematography with the out of focusness just used too much here. It was just distracting and took away from it. Now, with all this complaining and things I didn't like, there's a lot to like here. I think that, obviously, you're crazy if you don't agree with this statement, but David Thewlis stole the show here, and he did amazing as John D. From top to bottom. Those are the scenes I was on the edge of my seat. And also, in the book, in the first volume, those were the scenes I was on the edge of my seat. So it kind of lined up where I was actually having more fun away from the Sandman and what was going on in other stories, and really impressed by how they did the 24-hour episode, and that it was gripping, and you kind of honestly just watch that as its own movie. You could just play that episode, and it has great writing in it, and that's props, obviously, Neil Gaiman, but really David Thewlis just kills it there. Every actor in that episode, and that it really could just be, like I said, those great Sandman self-contained stories in a sense, even though Sandman always gets involved one way or another, that it's something you could just throw on without knowing anything about the show and really enjoy it. And I thought that was the standout of the season, and that was to be expected because that was the standout chapter to me in the whole series. That was my favorite chapter, and it gets really dark. I think they went almost all the way there. It wasn't perfect. Like, you know, it wasn't like a masterpiece episode. I think there's still something a little flat about all this, but it was really good, and I thought they did a good job with that. And again, David Thewlis just stole the show here. And what I did like, though, is that we knew he was going to leave eventually, and I was wondering how the final episodes would fill out, but I actually really loved the actress of Rose Walker. I thought she was great. I thought some of the story with her was really good, but then I thought the final 2 episodes got a little flat again, but most of it worked for me, especially because we got also great other appearances and castings. Like the Corinthian I thought was great. I thought, obviously, Stephen Fry's Gilbert was great. I thought Patton Oswalt as the Raven, Matthew, awesome. It was perfect. And then Marvin, we got a little bit of Mark Hamill, which was really good. I thought Lucien was excellent. And I also thought Death was excellent. I think Kirby Hal Baptiste has the perfect aura for that part. There's a little charm there. She gets the character of Death. So I think that was really exciting to see. Again, in all of this, when I'm finding these moments, I'm like, oh, they nailed that. They nailed that actor. It's just still, I'm just sitting there wishing, like, oh, if they just had someone play Dream that was in that, like, Christian Bale vibe of that coldness. Like, look how Christian Bale was perfect for the role of someone like Gore, where there's that coldness to him, the soul broken. We need that. That's part of the Sandman, to see this man change, transform. We can't just have him being this nice, you know, friendly-looking guy. So that was, could not get out of that in my head, which was bringing it down for me. But when I look at my scores for the whole season, episode by episode, most of them are in the 8 range, and a good amount also in the 7 range. That's kind of where it falls. So I averaged all my scores out, and it actually hit 8 on the nose for me this season. I think the best was in the middle, and again, with the 24-hour chapter in the beginning of Rose Walker's story, I thought was the best of the show. I think some stuff was a little flat. Also, even Joanna Constantine's story with Jenna Coleman, it still felt like the look of it was like maybe the Lucifer show on Netflix, which is from the same universe of the Sandman, but it had too much of that where I wanted a little more, you know, different looking, more bigger budget looking, where, again, it just felt like another of those kind of adaptions. It's like, okay, this is just a TV show doing something that's way better, that's in a comic form, but that kind of just wasn't amazing. I think throughout the whole show, I was sitting there, it had me, I was interested, but I was never, again, besides that 24-hour thing, I was never really on the edge of my seat or just excited to go to the next episode and really engaged in. But maybe I'm biased too, because like I said, I wasn't really totally engaged in the comics either. So please keep that in mind too. Maybe you were on the edge of your seat your whole time with this. I'd love to know. But that also is a criticism to the score here too. That to me felt like a Harry Potter score mixed with like Lock and Key, if you heard the score for that on Netflix, where it's a little too happy for my taste for Sandman in my head. Like, when I'm reading the comics, I'm not imagining, like, do, like, through the show. So that felt offbeat in tone, too. So, strange. But I'm interested to see where this is going to go. It's interesting they nicely stopped it at the end of Volume 2 here with Rosa Story. It was a good place to hit. I think they plotted it well to have these 2 volumes be the first season. I think that makes sense. I think that I wish we could have saw the Sand story in there. That would have been really cool. But I get it. It's hard to kind of just put a self-contained story randomly in a show season because you're kind of will stop momentum of the whole show. It's not a comic, so you got to change some things up. We'll see if they do the cat thing. I love the cat story. If you haven't read the comics, definitely read the next volume to get that cat story. It's one of my favorites. I hope we actually get to see that, but I won't be surprised if we don't. I get it. But overall, for me, this show, I'm going to take away is that David Thewlis is the peak of it. He was awesome. I love the 24-hour episode. I like the beginning of Rose Walker's story. There's a lot of good casting here. Mostly got it right, but it's just hard when you had the most important character get right in Dream. It was just a miscast, and it really brought this down for me. And again, with the blurry filter everywhere, the out-of-focus backgrounds just didn't work for me visually. But I still think it's a solid outing, and it's a tough task to pull off the Sandman comics as a show. So I think it has potential to have a way better season 2. And I think that there's a lot of good groundwork here. And maybe consider, giving Tom Sturridge the black eyes, doing something to make him a little more intimidating and really feel like the Lord of Dreams here. So I'm giving it an 8. Let me know what you thought. I love to hear other thoughts. Please, everything, every casting, every episode, what you thought. I'm really interested because there's so many thoughts I have going on about this. But I want to see how it lands with you guys in particular the most. So let me know. Please subscribe if you enjoyed my review here. I do a bunch of reviews, movie reviews as well. And I also do celebrity interviews. Please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of me. And I'll see you next time.